two driveways to either side. We don't think it would be a significant impact on the neighbors. Staff has received 2 comments, both in support of the project, and I've put copies of the emails on your desks, or on your dais. One from 399 and the other from 395 Atherton Avenue. We've received no other comments other than those 2. I'm available to answer any questions, and the applicant is also here. Thank you.
Any questions, Rick?
I just I kind of lost my place on your report. The existing home is not conforming to the tune of about 3 square feet right now.
Correct.
What would be the adjustment with the lot line redesignation? That would increase to?
165 square
Okay,
feet.
thank you.
Yeah.
Is there some reasoning that I'm missing that they didn't just ask for a variance for the garage?
They might speak a little better too, but my understanding is that the garage is really, the detached garage is really the driving point and what they're really, a strong point of their design. So rather than having, when we met with them, they've been really good about coming in and reviewing the plans, and we always talk about how difficult variance findings are to meet. And I think for them, they would rather have the garage be conforming than the yoga studio, because that was more important to their design. And you can correct me if I'm wrong when you come up, but we also did speak with them about the possibility of not going for the lot line redesignation and just coming for the special structure permit and then a variance for the garage down the road. And they did want to move forward. They had done a lot of work, and staff didn't really know we were going to support the variance until we'd done a site inspection and reviewed the plans. So they know that that might be an option, that if the lot line redesignation is denied, that they would have to come back for a variance for the garage.
Yeah, I think in our initial meetings, we expressed some concern with the variances we do with most applications. And I think it's very helpful based on the full analysis of the plans, conducting the site inspection. We feel better about the variance application in this situation because the property is unique. But it is always tricky with garages when they have a garage and they want to, construct a new garage to justify that variance. So
Let's be careful.
We have
which variance we're talking about.
You're right.
For
the hypothetical variance for a garage.
Thank you.
In our initial discussions, we expressed some concern about supporting that. But I think based on more analysis and our site inspection, we're more comfortable with that scenario. So it takes time to review an application, and that was the initial comments.
Any further questions?
So I just want to make sure, if we did not, I'll wait until later on that comment. I want to hear what the applicant says, so I get either more complex or less complex.
Thank you, Andre.
Thank you.
Is the applicant here a representative?
Yes. And I did go out to the site, I just didn't.
That's
Oh,
what it does.
yeah.
Very good, very good.
I went out there on Saturday.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Surprised we missed you.
I didn't go to the backyard, but I just
Oh.
went out the driveway and then I went to the neighbor's boat.
Okay, excellent. For those of you who have not met, Kurt Hogan, homeowner at 397 Atherton, here with my wife Kate.
Co-homeowner.
Exactly, she's officially the homeowner. I'm the help. We've also have our team here from landscape perspective and architecture perspective. And so we want to thank you guys for some time this evening to talk about our project. And so what we thought we'd do is just spend just very brief history of the house and our ownership of it, and then our intent. I think Andrea and the team has done a great job of providing kind of the content and provide some of the color and what we're trying to achieve, and hopefully leave with it being a little less complex, and Mary will answer your question as well. So, brief history, I think as Andrea has mentioned, starts at Atherton Avenue, goes down to Atherton Creek. We actually purchased the home from the Masters family. They're the original owners, bought the house in 1973. It's a California ranch. We love the house. We're keeping the house. We love the architecture. And frankly, we love the trees and privacy. And so it is a flag lot. It's flanked on the sides by our neighbors' driveways. And so in part, those are factors that are driving the 4 items on the list tonight, which we'll describe. So I think some of the characteristics Andrea talked about, the most prominent is the slope. It's pretty significant in the front and the back. We've got great coverage from trees and privacies. And so what we've been trying to accomplish, the outcomes we're trying to drive here, we want to keep the house. Like I said, we're living in it. We bought it a year ago, April, moved in a couple months later. We're there with our family right now. We want to effectively try to do two things. One, create some flat space for our kids in the backyard. We don't really have a spot that's safe or flat where we can, kick a ball around or throw a ball. We also want to basically pin up the backyard a bit because there's erosion concerns. There's a pretty substantial drop off of Atherton Creek, and we've talked to Jeff, our neighbor. He's very supportive of us trying to fix that issue, which has been associated with the site for some time. And then create some living space. So we would like to convert the existing garage into some living space. It's currently about half used as our kitchen and our washer and dryer. So we'd love to try to expand that a little bit, which sort of drove the need for a detached garage, which we'll talk about here in a second. So just the summary of the 4 items, starting with the most intuitive one first, the retaining wall in the back. It's being proposed as an L structure, basically just to hold up the backyard and create level space. The wall itself is actually pretty long, and across the full wall, the average I think is around 5 feet in terms of height, but in that back corner, the grade drops pretty substantially, and so that's where we get to the 9 feet area. We have walked it through with both neighbors on both sides. In terms of the height, visibility is not a concern. We're all on board with screening and privacy, and really want to just create a safe backyard and stop the erosion. So that's the logic behind the retaining wall. I'll come to that one in a second, because that's a little harder to explain, but I'll get there. The second thing is the yoga studio. So along the idea of trying to create another structure to get a little bit more space, the team has designed a yoga studio, which basically, you can see it on the right-hand side of the picture there. We felt like that was a good location for a couple of reasons. The first of which is tucked behind the house, so you can't see it on the front drive. It's also in a nice private spot, and the neighbor on this side of the fence has a big driveway there, so it's good from a neighbor perspective. And then obviously from a location standpoint, it allows us access at the house level, and it also would allow us access at the patio level. And so, when my folks come over, it's helpful for us to have a spot where they can get to on grade, and then also we'd love to eventually use it as a pool house if we're lucky enough to be able to put a pool in someday. So that's the logic behind the location. And then really the second part of that dialogue is the basement, and I think Andrea summarized it well in that as we're trying to deal with the grade in that backyard, the grade drops very substantially from the top of where the yoga studio would be planned to the bottom. And so we basically created a walkout type structure on the bottom half of the structure so that you could walk into it from the patio level and at the upper level. And so we've tried to put a lot of time and effort into making sure that the yoga studio complements the house architecturally from a design perspective. It looks nice, and also, maybe even most importantly, respects the privacy of our neighbors, such that we're being respectful with them. So those are the 3, and then as Andrea started to get into this, and again, I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. Really, the 4th thing we're focusing on is trying to find the right spot for a detached garage. And so we spent several months really looking at a spot that wouldn't require variance, and we've roughly mapped it up there. So on the left-hand side of this picture, you can see the front setback with the accessory structure behind it, and that red box is where the garage would have had to go. And we got pretty far down the path, and it started to get pretty complicated. The cut and fill on that hill is substantial. Grade is a mess. And Kate and I were candidly sitting at home saying, we're going to put a garage right in front of our front door. And it doesn't seem to be what we've seen in Atherton or the spirit of what's trying to be done. And so what we looked at is, our set of other options. And it just seemed like the garage to the left side of that picture was the intuitive right spot. Our neighbor's driveway, Jeff's driveway, is right there. There's huge open space, so there's no neighbor interference, and on the upper right-hand side, we've got a neighbor pretty close. We could eliminate the hardscape or reduce it. We had to put a little back in for the fire truck turnaround, but it's much more green space. We wouldn't have a garage right in front of the house, so visually that seemed right. And so to do that, we thought that a lot line redesignation was the most appropriate step, but it did create the complications that Andrea brought up, which is the non-conforming portion of the house, the 300 some odd square feet there you see in the first blue box, and it also would cause us to ask for a variance on the yoga studio location. And so, Mary, to your question, I don't know that we had good solid logic for a redesignation versus a variance, maybe just down homeowner process. We just figured that that was the most acceptable path to try to get the garage over on the side and to minimize the hardscape and so forth. But there wasn't more sophistication in it in terms of our intent than that. So that's what we were shooting for. And then, you know, the summary, I think, as we try to pull all those together, again, the rear retaining walls to prop up the backyard and try to give us a flat spot. The lot line was about, you know, attaining a space for a garage and making sure that we didn't have to rip into that front hill and pull down the green space. And then the yoga studio was, you know, the intention of the yoga studio is to give us a bit more square footage, and then the basement to deal with the grade. So that is the quick summary, and we've got Lawson from the architecture perspective and Brian from landscape perspective here to answer questions.
Thank you, Kurt. Any questions?
It's, I would call it creative homeowner, not super homeowner in the approach. So it was a very creative approach that you took to trying to solve the problem.
Thanks.
Anyone else want to comment on this matter? There being none, then I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the planning commission. I'll start with you. You're on the end.
Go ahead, Mary.
We're talking about 4 things,
Right.
so I was wondering if we could handle one at a time.
We'll start with the lot line redesignation. I think that's the first one.
Okay.
Wow, okay. There's a lot here. And I had the pleasure of talking to Kurt for an extended conversation today, and that was great. And it was great to go out there and see everything that you're dealing with, like I told you today. Where I'm empathetic about this whole thing is the fact that you're trying to retain the single-story nature of the house, everything that has to do with where you bought, and because of your deference to that, that's kind of put you into this pickle a little bit. So that makes me feel that you're really trying to do the right thing by the nature of the neighborhood and your neighbors and all that, and I totally respect that. I personally, it's been brought up about the garage variance. I would be more comfortable looking at a garage variance rather than redesignating the lot lines. The house becomes a lot more non-conforming. Then you start looking at I think there's just more complications with a lot redesignation, and the fact that I think and I might be wrong here, and I would defer to the other commissioners, but we might be setting more of a precedent with a lot line redesignation than we would with a variance on the garage, is kind of where I'm coming from. And I don't know if you guys feel the same way. I'm the newcomer here. And that's essentially the way I look at it. I really am enthused with the way you look at the property and what you're trying to do. And I'm totally empathetic to the nature of the lot and the difficulties that piece of property that you're confronted with. But that's kind of the way I look at the lot redesignation.
Thank you, Paul. Mary Beth?
Well, I went out and saw the property, and I agree with you, Paul, that it is a difficult piece of property, and I understand where we're coming from. And I also have a difficult time increasing the nonconformity of the house. And however, I would be very open to considering a variance on the garage, because there isn't really another good place for the garage. So with regard to the lot line designation, I think that's where I am.
All right.
Yeah, first of all, I appreciate the creativity to solve the problem, which is what the motivator was, not to get around rule, but to solve the problem.
Right.
So that's the key aspect that I was watching for, is somebody trying to break the rule or circumvent the rule or solve the problem, and that does that. I wouldn't be in favor of the lot line swap, just because I think it's a major precedent-setting thing for the city overall, and just would be the beginning of a not a good train to leave the station. But I do like the fact that there's a unique enough situation on the property so that the variances that would be asked for, both the ones in front of us today and the ones that could be asked in the future, or specifically the garage, would be acceptable to me. I had a couple of questions for staff on the drainage around the retaining wall, but I'll wait till we get to the retaining wall section.
Okay. I feel the same way. I think our code says we should not increase nonconformity. That bothers me a lot. If we deny the request for lot line redesignation, then the need for a variance for the yoga studio goes away. And then we're faced with the owner's faced with whatever he wants to do with the garage. So I am not in favor of the lot line redesignation. Okay, we'll take that one by itself. Is there a motion?
I'll move that we reject the request for a lot line designation change.
At 397 Atherton Avenue.
Thank you, yes, like I said.
Second.
Second, Mary Beth seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The lot line redesignation is denied. Kurt, if you want to appeal that part of it, you have 10 days from today's date to appeal that part to the council. Okay, the next item is a special structures permit to allow basement under a guest house. And that one we can handle, I think. We'll start with you, Kurt, on this one.
Yeah, I like the idea that it's a good way to use the space at a grade, and it also acts as another retaining wall to that section, I guess, in a funny way. So it builds into the hillside. So I'm okay with that variance myself. I don't know if there's nothing that the staff brings up, Andrea. There's no issues there, drainage-wise or anything like that.
The drainage will be looked at as part of the building permit, so they would have to meet all the town's drainage criteria at
Okay.
that point.
Because it does change the impervious surface, so that's the
Right.
aspect of it that I wanted to make sure we're good on. And that means it drains more back to the creek, I guess, so something to look at. That's all I have.
I was out there on Tuesday and looked at the property, and I think the special structures permit to the basement is very good under this situation. Mary Beth?
Well, I would agree. I am concerned about drainage into the creek. I'm not certain that Atherton homes are supposed to drain into the creek. I think that, isn't the creek supposed to handle the runoff from the hill, from like the Portello Valley and like that? And the more that we contribute to it, the bigger our problem is down the channel. So my only concern is that appropriate drainage tank, the dry well type of approach, be done on the property, and try to hold as much water on the property as possible. Not that we have a whole lot of water that we need to talk about right now, but in other years there may be. So I just want to, I guess I would ask for a landscape plan that shows the appropriate dry well approach.
Does this increase the amount? Right now it's draining into the.
It goes there anyway.
Right. Yes, the question is, the basement itself would not increase the amount, right? So the question I had was, would the basement trigger a change in the amount? Because as it would be right now, the yoga studio would be the footprint, and the yoga studio would cover the impervious surface with or without a basement.
Right.
So the basement in and of itself doesn't cause it, it's the footprint of the studio.
Yeah.
Right? So is there
Andrea wanted to answer.
I was just, I'm not an engineer, but I sit next to him. My understanding is that you're not allowed to create additional runoff from what's there now. So if this project, created additional impervious surface and created additional runoff, they'd have to find a way to maintain it on site rather than draining into the creek.
That's part of the building.
There's your pool option.
Paul?
No, you guys have said it all.
Okay, very good. Okay, we have a motion then on the special structures permit.
I'll move that the planning commission approve the special structures permit at 397 Atherton Avenue based on the findings and for the reasons enumerated in the staff report, subject to the conditions listed in the draft special structures permit to allow a basement under a detached accessory building.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Been moved and seconded, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
The special structures permit is approved. If you desire to appeal that one to the council, you have 10 days. The next one is special structures permit to allow retaining wall greater than 6 feet in height at the lower end of the property. We'll start with you again, Paul.
I have nothing. I saw the property. I feel that it's acceptable. I think that, as Andrea noted in her staff report, with proper screening, it's removed far enough away from their property and down the hill, and I think the neighbors are aware of it. They don't have any problem with it. And when it comes to downhill runoff, and you have a creek below there that could also provide a certain degree of erosion during the heavy winters and things like that, I think it's a necessity. So I'm in favor of it.
Mary Beth?
I'm in favor of it as well.
I am too. The question I have on that is drainage against the wall, and cooling against the wall. So, because that's a natural dam. And one side of it's a retaining wall, the other side's a dam. So I know that there'll be a lot of effort and Andrea will put into that. So that'll be the one thing that we want to make sure of on that one. Also, the other aspect of that at the foot of a slope is if water pools there, it changes the saturation on that spot, which is in front of the retaining wall, which is holding up the hill. So it just, it's not a good engineering thing if it's not done right. I've seen houses on the bottom of the hill because of that.
Well, the two things, the structural people and the soil engineers will deal with that issue.
Right. I just want to make sure that we at least bring it up.
I agree. I think the retaining wall is a necessity in this case. Now, we have a motion, please? Someone?
Where is it?
I'll move, Eric. I move that the planning commission approve the special structures permit at 397 Atherton Avenue based on the findings and for the reasons enumerated in the staff report, subject to the conditions listed in the draft special structures permit to allow the construction of a retaining wall greater than 6 foot in height at the rear of the yard.
Second, please.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the retaining wall is greater than 6 feet in height. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved. Again, if you desire to appeal that one to the council, you can. 10 days.
Erosion and water management.
It's the standard review item of the town to the drainage review, yeah, and the engineering.
Okay, thank you. That concludes.
Would prefer for a clean record if you were to deny the variance.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
Item 4.
Item 4.
All right, I move that the planning commission approve the variance, deny the variance of 397 Atherton Avenue as required finding cannot be met for the reason incorporated in the staff report. For specific variance we're talking about is
The guest house.
The guest
Guest
house
house variance, right.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded to deny the variance for the yoga studio. All in favor say aye.
Aye. And that's because the rotation of the lot was
Right, not required.
Technically not.
Yeah.
I'm just trying
I had to connect that dot in my head. All right.
Thank you, and if you desire to appeal that one, you can appeal that one to the council in 10 days.
All right.
It's denied, thank you. Okay, that concludes the lot line designations and comments on 397 Atherton Avenue.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is the variance at 95 Mount Vernon. Staff report? Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you.
Nice presentation, by the way.
Thank you for coming out. You're welcome.
The next item before you is a request for a variance at 95 Mount Vernon. The applicant is requesting a variance to allow a detached garage be built closer than is allowed into the required front setback. Parcel is a flag lot, set back from Mount Vernon. The lot has recently been cleared and a new residence is permitted for the site. A detached garage has already been approved at the site as well. And I believe it's, attachment 6 shows the staff level approval for the location of the garage as well as the proposed location for the garage. Again, accessory buildings are required to be located a minimum of 30 feet behind the front wall of the residence or 120 feet from the front property line, whichever is less. And again, in this case, the flag lots also have the ability to request a special structure permit to allow an accessory building be located at the front setback line. In this case, the applicant would like to locate the garage 11 feet 4 inches from the front property line and therefore would need a variance. The proposed garage would meet all other setback requirements. The applicant is asking for an exception to the front setback because placement of the garage in accordance with the approved location would place the garage too close to some trees that are located within the PG&E easement. The applicant explains that the current approved location of the garage is within the working and maintenance space of the nearby PG&E easement. The applicant further notes that accessibility to the trees for future maintenance is important and that drilling the 14 to 18 foot piers required for the garage could compromise the structure of the trees if the roots are harmed. Our town arborist, Kevin Keelty, visited the site and reviewed the plans and supports the location of the garage in either location, either the staff level approved location or the proposed location. He notes that that the pier holes for the approved location would be drilled to a depth below the root zones of the existing trees, and that the method is common and utilized often. And he also noted that because the trees are redwoods, they have surface roots, so drilling the piers deeper than 2 feet won't have any greater effect than drilling a 2 foot deep pier. The arborist also concluded that moving the garage to the proposed location would lessen the impact to the trees in that area, but that the impact caused by allowing the garage to be built as approved would not cause any major impacts to the trees. If the garage is left as is where approved, he did recommend irrigation for the trees a little bit heavier than normal and pre-excavation fertilization in order to mitigate any possible impacts to roots. There are several alternatives to placing the garage in the proposed location. One is to construct it where it was approved by staff. There's also other portions along the other side of the property where it could be constructed. And although that might not be the most desirable to the applicants, it still would be allowable by the code. In this case, we don't think there's any hardship that would prohibit the applicant from constructing a garage in accordance with the municipal code. And it should be noted that the code does not require on-site covered parking. In order to grant the variance, the commission would need to make 4 findings. As you know from our staff report, we believe that 3 of the 4 findings cannot be met. The property is subject to the same setback requirements as other flag lots within the town, and they have the ability to request a special structures permit to locate the garage at the front setback line, which is a privilege reserved only for flag lots. We do believe that one of the findings, finding 3, can be met as the garage is set back from the right of the way and will not have a significant impact on neighbors. But if you did want to approve the variance, you would need to make all 4 findings in the affirmative. We have received no public comments to date. The applicant is present and we are also available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions of Andrea? Anyone?
Yeah, is this the same applicant that put forward the approved plan? Or is it?
Yes.
It is, okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you.
Open the public hearing on the variance at 95 Mount Vernon. Is the applicant here or representative?
I am, yes.
Would you like to step forward and make a comment?
Good evening. So I am the project manager with Tuppy Construction and Restoration. We're the general contractor that will be building on site. The applicant has chosen not to be here this evening and me be the representative for them. We are simply putting in for the variance for the reasons listed and discussed with Andrea, and there's no more comments other than that. I know we've had discussions on site. There's nothing really to add or to comment on further, and we will accept your decision either way.
Any questions for Gabrielle? Anyone?
Yeah, the location that you've chosen, and there's other alternatives like the house moving a little bit too. Did you, how far down the planning process are you on that?
We are out of the planning process, and we are about 2 weeks away from submitting for a building permit. So this decision tonight is going to either have us go right or go left for the completion of the building permit process and for full submittal.
So you keep the garage where it is if we don't change anything? Is that rather than
Correct.
another acceptable location?
We are, the applicant is on a very tight timeline. Their current home in Palo Alto is purchased, and in order to do this project, they have a 12-month schedule for the course of construction. So part of the agreement to build and to be their builder, we have made a tight agreement with them to meet that deadline for tax reasons and a bunch of personal reasons that they've asked me not to discuss. So in respect for those reasons, we want to continue forward with the building permit process and get building.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Gabriel.
Thank you.
Close no, sorry. Anyone else in the audience like to speak on the variance at 95 Mount Vernon? No one else? We'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the planning commission. Eric, we'll start with you.
I was thinking Mary Beth would start on this one.
Okay.
We have to start. All right, I've been out to see the property. The lot is cleared. It's a fairly regular shaped lot. Other than the easement at the back, there's really, I didn't see anything unusual about the lot or an avenue to provide an exception. And for that reason, I'm not really in favor of the variance.
Okay, Paul?
I'm thinking along the same lines. I look at a blank slate, and I'm not a builder, I'm not an architect, but I look at a cleared site, and I'm thinking you go in knowing what the setbacks are, and I think you need to abide by those. I think Eric brought up a good point with the previous case on Atherton Avenue, where you have some existing problems and an existing structure, and you're looking at the site creatively, and you're trying to work with the problem and create a solution rather than avoid a coding or any restrictions. And I don't see evidence of that here, and that's kind of the way I'm looking at it.
Eric?
Yeah, frankly, I didn't see anything unusual about the lot at all compared to any other lot that we looked at. So there wasn't a unique thing that said, absolutely, this would generate an exception. I don't mind the location of the garage as you requested it, from the standpoint of the way it lays out relative to where you place the house. But the fact that the application has already been made and accepted, and the fact that the variance is requested for no reason other than we'd rather have it there, I can't support it. And it would be a unique situation that would be not justifiable compared to other applicants we have before us.
Thank you. I visited the site on Tuesday, and I have the same feeling. I think this is an opportunity to build a house within all of our setback if they wanted to. The house itself is within the setback, the garage isn't. So I'm not in favor of granting the variance at 95 Mount Vernon. Who would like to make a motion?
Okay. Mary Beth is ready for it, or not? Okay. I move that the planning commission deny variance at 95 Mount Vernon Lane as required, finding cannot be met to the reasons incorporated in the staff report.
Second, please.
I'll second.
All seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Variance on 95 Mount Vernon is denied. You have 10 days from today's date to appeal to the council if you feel like it. 10 days. Thank you.
Good luck with the construction.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's a good property. It's a very good.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful property. Thank you so much.
Nice access.
Thank you.
too. I like 30 driver back there. I didn't even know it existed.
Yeah. The old house of all time. Okay, the next item on the agenda is amending Atherton Municipal Code 17.40 accessory buildings and structures. There is a lengthy staff report.
He was trying to see if you were listening.
Thank you. This item was continued from your last meeting where you discussed some options for making some changes to accessory building separation, and at that meeting you directed staff to come back with just the item focused on the separation between accessory structures and accessory buildings. And just to remind you, we are not talking about making any changes to the setback requirements between the main building and an accessory building, only between accessory structures and themselves. So staff does recommend eliminating that 8-foot separation, and I kind of gave a couple of examples. We also have some plans that are included in your packet that Andrea could maybe walk through if you want, if you have any questions on those. And also I spent some time talking this over with the building official, and he wanted me to assure you that the building code, the fire code addresses life safety, building safety issues. And so there's a lot of different issues in the building code that talk about separation, depending on the type of construction. Okay, so all that's covered in the code. An example could be if you had, and this is in another community, maybe a detached accessory building that was 3 feet off property line, that may be permitted if there was 1-hour fire rating and no openings. But the farther you move it away, the more openings you can have and the different type of construction. So just wanted to let you know about that. And then also we talked to the fire department, and they do not see any issue with eliminating the 8-foot separation between accessory structures. Again, they didn't see that as any kind of a safety issue. But I do have some suggested wording that if you were to consider eliminating that, and that it still have some discretion, that the town planner reviews the plans. We can check in with the fire department, check in with the building department to see if there's anything unique about the property. It could be due to a slope that you don't want to have these structures close together because you really can't access it. And so we do have some discretion in here that we would eliminate that 8-foot separation unless there was some life safety issues. And then we would say, no, you have to meet that 8-foot separation. So that's a suggested additional wording in there based on some of the concerns you expressed at the last meeting. So I'd be happy to try to answer any of your questions, and as I said, Andrea can kind of walk through those examples if you want.
Okay, please do.
I have a quick question. Well, while Andrew's coming up here, can you talk about the process on this that we would go through tonight, what we do, and how that
Sure,
works?
so I do have, it is a public hearing, we did notice it, it's been continued, so if you were comfortable with the wording before you, you could recommend this ordinance forward to the city council. I would take it to the city council, they would then discuss it, possibly introduce it at their meeting, and then there's another reading, a second reading for adoption, and then it becomes effective 30 days after that meeting. So we still have a few hearings to go.